Okay, for 15 minutes, and it's starting now.
Hello, everybody. So today I'm going to talk to you about public-private partnership co-management approach and marine protected areas analysis. So my immersion project is actually still with Blue Finance, which is specialized international NGO in finding solutions for management and sustainable financing. So marine protected areas, there are 4,435 marine protected areas, also known as MPAs in the world. However, only 0.65% are covered in the world, and 2% are high seas, and 1.89% are exclusively non-take zones, MPAs. The important part of marine protected areas is actually how effective MPAs can implement ecologically and social economic factors. So for the implementation of ecological factors, they can actually help with fish stock conservation, habitat and species conservation, and can help with research, as well as it can help with education. While on the economic level, as well as on the social political level, it can actually help with economic income. It can help with food accessibility. It can help with local communities and increase resilience to climate change. However, there is a big problem, which is the inadequate funding, so financial aid, as 65% of the MPAs have inadequate management budgets, which leads to the 91% of inadequate staff capacity. In fact, there is an estimation that between 12 billion and 45 billion US dollars are needed for a successful MPA, yet only around 6.5 billion US dollars are used per year to invest in the protected areas. So there's a new concept, a new process to actually help financially these MPAs, which is private-public partnership co-management, also called PPP co-management, which is an agreement between a private entity that takes advantage of the public asset financially, technologically, and economically. However, it does give something in return. This something is financial aid. So essentially, PPP co-management is the fulfillment of the gap between the public demands and the inability of the government to actually financially provide for them. So the aim of the presentation, therefore, is to better understand the relationship between private-public parties and MPAs, and the purpose is to understand how to construct a perfect guide based on the information collected during the research. Because a little bit of a backstory is that myself, my supervisor, Nicolas Pascal, and my co-author, Zainab Page, were actually working on a peer review and a policy brief to understand the different MPAs that work with PPP co-management and how to implement this concept. So to do so, we did a selection between 11 MPAs based on access data and subjective opinion. So these MPAs were already in the database of Blue Finance. And access data means if they are accessible, meaning that if we can contact them through email or social media. And a subject opinion, essentially what we did was a background check between all of the MPAs and understand if they were good candidates for us or not. Then the MPAs that we have chosen have gone through a second criterion based on qualitative indicators. And again, through further research, we understood which ones are perfect for us and which are not. And we have chosen 4 specific MPAs. And these MPAs were subject to an interview with a questionnaire. The questionnaires questions are based on information collected both from myself, from my co-author, and supervisor Nicolas Pascal. So the 4 MPAs that we have chosen are the Bonaire National Marine Park, found on the coast of Venezuela in the Caribbean Netherlands. Then we have Sofia Marine Management Area, which is found in St. Lucia. The Tornif Atoll Marine Reserve, which is found in Belize, and the Sugged Island Marine Conservation Area, which is found in Malaysia. So for the results, we created, again, a selection of different factors, which are based on management, co-management, human resources, financial values, environment conservation, economic values, and legal framework. And we have created, based on the responses to a question, if these factors were present or absent or high, moderate, and low. However, the real presentation is actually the analysis, which is based on three specific characteristics of PPP co-management, which is, first of all, PPP co-management of an MPA is often formed by the interest of private individuals, organizations, NGOs, and structure. Then we have economic factors are essential, yet are not determined as problematic. And there is a necessity to valorize and increase the need of effective legislation. So now for the analysis of each of the MPAs. So for Sugged Island Marine Conservation Area, it is a co-management between the island government and the Sugged Island Marine Conservation Area. And the committee is constructed by a board of directors, which is all the sectors and advisory committee. There are 10 staff individuals, and there is a yearly annual report provided to the government. For the Bonaire National Marine Park, it's again between the actual marine park and the island government. And there's a committee which is formed by the board of directors, which is formed by strategic committee and marine experts. And the staff capacity is made out of 18 individuals. There is a management plan that dates back to 2006, but it still has not been fully implemented, but it isn't implemented right now. Then we have the Sofia Marine Management Area, which is composed by the Marine Park and the Fisheries Act, so the Fishery Department. Actually, a backstory was that they actually created this co-management to live in harmony, let's say. And the committee is made out of the board of directors and a non-scientific committee. And the individual staff are made of 10 to 12 people, and the management plan has not been revised. Then as last, we have the Tornef Atoll Marine Reserve, which is made of the Ministry of Fisheries Department and the actual Tornef Atoll Sustainability Association, so similar to Sofia Marine Management Area. The committee is composed by the stakeholders and the science committee, and there are individuals of 22 staff members, and the management plan is not updated. So there are similarities and differences within the analysis for the PPP part of the factors, and most of them follow a similar line of co-management approach. However, the big difference is actually in the committee, as some do have are formed by scientific committee, while others are just formed by stakeholders. Then on the economic aspects, so the Sugged Island Marine Conservation has an annual budget of $500K US. This is based mainly on tourism fee, covering 50% of their budget, resort lease fee, grants, government funds, and donations, and the tourism is all year. While for the local community, there is an involvement program and resort purchasing local seafood. Then for the Bonaire National Marine Park, we have $1.8 million US as an annual budget. Again, the fee is mainly based on tourism fee, government grants, and donations, and the tourism is all year. While for the local communities, there are ranger training programs for youth and adult for the island to access professions. Then for the Sofia Marine Management Management Area, we have between 150 and 200K US per annual budget. It is mainly tourism fees, some grants, and provide consultancy. The tourism is seasonal, and for the community, there are coral restoration and training for taxi operations. While for Tornef Atoll Marine Reserve, there is $644,900 US annual budget, which comes from grants, fees, grants, tourism activities, blue carbon markets, and fees, hopefully in 2021. And the tourism is actually seasonal, and there is not defined a local community help. So as you can see, the big thing here is that they all rely on tourism. However, none of them have a high annual budget. Then going to legislation enforcement, for Sugged Island Marine Conservation, there is limited power. However, there is a cooperation between the Marine Police and Marine Enforcement Agency. For the Bonaire National Marine Park, there are rangers that have the power to write out citations for the offenders. For the Sophia Marine Management Area, there are full delegated rangers that can have the power to seize and arrest. While for the Torfin Atoll Marine Reserve, again, there's full power delegated and rangers can officially arrest if needed. So for the enforcement in legislation, there is high enforcement in legislation. However, still, it's not 100% it's not 100% empowered. So the main challenges that we can see in all MPAs, not only the ones described to you, is that there's a problem in maximization of the ecological and social-economic benefits, which you can see also in these four. There's a problem in the implementation of MPA management plan, again, that you can see in these four. There is a problem in creating affecting monitoring and reporting structure, which is present in all of these, but to be honest, at a really low scale. And there's a problem in reaching financial stability that you have seen in all of the MPAs, except for maybe Bonaire is a little bit more successful in financial stability compared to the other three. So the key challenges of actually the MPAs described are enforcement legislation, financial stability, and organization sectors. So one thing that I want to precise here is that all of these are primary factors, which means that these are a list of factors that tell you how an actual MPA should be, how can it be successful. But in reality, you should take in consideration also secondary factors. By secondary factors, I mean culture, religion, government, because every single MPA is in a different part of the world, and every part of the world is completely different. So maybe for Bonaire, it might work differently from, for example, Simca. And therefore, to construct, let's say, the perfect policy brief, the perfect peer review, we need to take into consideration a broader side of each single MPA. So secondary factors are important. So in conclusion, private-public partnership co-management is a new concept still. Each MPA is different, as I said, by just looking at the four of them that we have discussed today. And there are secondary factors that do need to be taken in consideration and just not the primary factors. So really quickly, I would like to thank Blue Finance for the opportunity given to me, and I would like to thank my co-authors and Paige that is working with me right now on the peer review and policy brief. And I would like to also thank Mares and Christophe Moquet for giving me the opportunity and giving me contacts to Blue Finance to start this amazing Immersion project. Thank you. And here are the references.
Thanks, Sabrina. Yeah, you were a bit early, but that's fine, I guess. So here we've got different members of the jury, if I'm coming back to them. So Juliette, Paola, and Aldine. So I know who would like to start first.
I would like to start. Hello, Sabrina.
Hi.
I would like you point something that it's very important. It's all the secondary factor, including the culture of the different country, and I just you at the end compare three Caribbean MPAs against one that is from Malaysia. So I'm asking if you, now that you have this idea of the diversity, how you can really state about this secondary factor and how you can then select perhaps differently the different MPAs that you are analyzed if you want really to put in to really underline these secondary factors.
I didn't really get the question.
You said that you have secondary factor that can influence the evaluation of the different MPA and even how the different MPA can work. Today you compare 3 Caribbean MPA against 1 in Malaysia.
Yeah, okay.
So it's quite disproportionate.
Yeah.
If you have to really underline this secondary factor, what kind of methodology you will try to do?
Okay, so the Free Caribbeans, yes, they are from more or less, let's say, the same area. However, they do have different relationships also with fisheries. So there are different for talking about artisanal, industrial, and so go on. So that, for example, I didn't specify, but it could be involved also within the culture. So although they are part from the same Caribbean area, they do have differences within specific secondary factors.
Okay. And could you say more about, for example, how this secondary factor can influence the control of the MPA? Or
Yes.
you can?
Absolutely. Yeah, so the reality of the fact is that there should be a more extended research on this, in the sense that we should better understand the individual parties that compose the co-management. So going back, I'll just go back really quickly. So for example, no, not this one. So for example, with Sophia Marine Management, you have the Fishery Acts, which is the Fishery Department and the area, while for example, for SIMCA, the Sagda Island Marine Conservation, is the government and the area. So you have the co-management, which is formed by 2 different parties, completely different from one another. So you would actually have to do a even an interview, essentially, like towards the 2 different parties of the co-management, and better understand their input and their outtake on the marine conservation area.
Okay. Thank you, Sabrina.
Adine, yes.
Hi, Sabrina. So thank you for your presentation. Okay, I have a more general question. Maybe I missed it somewhere. So from your data analysis, at the beginning of the study, when you start this study, so what was your goal? Was it really descriptive in understanding what there is in terms of feature in all these different structure, or it was to study the link between the PPP and MPA? So can you clarify that? Thank you. And now from all this comparative data that you have, what for you pop up the most? I mean, what can you add regarding this link?
So yeah, so the original plan, let's say, the original purpose of this whole process was to understand, at the beginning, it was to understand PPP co-management per se. So like, it's a new concept. How is it a new concept? Does it work? Who is using the PPP co-management, and so go on. Then personally for me, it was more of understanding why it doesn't work as efficiently. Because to be honest, it's the perfect mixture, because you have financial aid from a private entity. However, the private entity benefits from the marine conservation. So it's a win-win situation. So it became more towards that. And I think that it's really interesting how you can see that there's not a specific guide. The MPAs don't follow a specific guide. The MPAs say, okay, we're a PP co-management. However, they do completely different, essentially. They follow the same line, but in reality, they have complete differences. What I take home from this is really the secondary factors said before, that it's not so simple to just say, okay, this is how it is, and that's it. You have to take in consideration I mean, everybody is different. Every single human individual is different, as well as every country is different. So you need to take in consideration every single factor that in reality, it can be really, really hard to do. But if we can kind of look around for a couple of MPAs and then from there start to implement and understand better, then we can reach a full-on guide, but more, I don't know how to say it, guide but not guide. Guide but
Okay.
more specific to
Okay.
specific countries.
Okay, thank you. And then you mean that the secondary factor may be the problem?
Yes.
So maybe, yeah, the problem. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So then, so just a quick second question. The way that the Caribbean structure are managed, did you find similarity or differences? Is there something, a consortium that start to emerge regarding the management of these three stations, because they are from the maybe same culture, or is it still really different culture from one island to another one? And how far are they from the Malaysian one?
I would say that they're quite far, but honestly speaking, I don't know if it's a process, if there's a specific factor that I can tell you why they are quite far from one another. So for example, over here, you have Turn of Adel Marine Reserve that has the committee based on stakeholders and science committee, while you have Sophia Marine Management Park that has no committee at all, and in reality it's not completely formed from stakeholders. So there's no specific reason why I can tell you they're far from each other, but they are far. I mean, I think that it mainly depends on the process of the construction of the MPA. So who was involved from the beginning probably helps.
And the size, do you think it's also the size can also lead to these differences? Okay.
Yeah, what needs to be done, if there is less implementation from before or from after. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, may I have maybe, so I guess we are all attracted by these secondary factors that you want to know more. And for example, you mentioned the religion. And I know if there is some literature on that, or how could you explain how religion could be important to take into account in the management of the MPA?
I think, so for me, when I was looking at religion for the marine protected areas, I was looking mainly at the traditions that come with a religion. So for example, if there is a specific fish that they capture, if there are specific processes within a day, or stuff that essentially is from day-to-day life, it's not anything too big. So,
okay, so isn't it more like tradition?
Yeah, religions and traditions. You know how we have, like, for example, Christmas. Like, I was thinking the same process, essentially.
Okay. Is there differences of tradition or religions between the three MPAs in the Caribbean?
I didn't look into it as much, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay. And then if we're looking at this 4 MPAs, which is of course a really small sample, but in this choice here, we have 3 with actually no really fishermen inside. Simca, BNMP, and TMR. Enfin, voilà. So it seems like only SMMA has really fishermen actively involved.
Yes, because in reality, what happened within this co-management was that there was a battle between the fishing department and the conservation area. So they had the great idea to actually sit down, essentially, and say, okay, how do we work together instead of battling against one another?
And does it mean that sorry, yeah, go ahead.
While the others, they work as a normal, a common, let's say common MPAs, in which they work to protect the area against fisheries that do not respect the legislation and enforcement rules that are implemented in the area.
And how fishermen or the fisheries in general are involved in that? I mean, is it on, because it seems like here it's only the local authorities and NGOs that are leading the thing? It seems like there is no real connection with the fishermen. So how can it be accepted and how can it work without the fishermen?
For the other ones, you say?
Yes.
Okay. No, so there is a connection there because for some of them, for example, Sucked Island Marine Conservation, by all sectors, we also mean fisheries. However, what I meant was that the SMMA, so the Sophia Marine Management Area, the fisheries are the fishermen and fishery department is directly involved within the co-management. While for others, especially for Simca and BN Bonnier National Marine Park, I was just going to say the whole thing. They are small. I don't want to say small voice. They are a voice in the sectors, but they're not as large as.
And so if we look at the PP, so public and private, there exist different types of public and private stakeholders. So do you have enough maybe background on that, and it's maybe a bit more than just your internship, to imagine who are the good stakeholders in public and in private to work together? Is it to be to speak about the fishermen, local people? Is it so for the private, or more like the hotels, resorts? For the public sector, is it more like the local authorities or more national, regional?
So I'm going to take, for example, Bonnier National Marine Park. Bonnier National Marine Park has is the one that works for now the best. And it works for the best because the board of directors, because there is a high tourism fee, so a high tourism.
It's also the one having the biggest budget, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So with tourism, obviously there's high budget, and therefore it works better. Yeah, I forgot you. Sorry.
Okay, let's see if this is the same. So next year with the COVID impact. Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you.
I don't know if some of you would like to add anything, Juliette.
No, it's good. Thank you.
Okay.
It was really interesting.
So we can move to Maeva. Hello, Maeva. And so we can propose you to share your screen. Nice blue Mares colors. Congratulations. Okay, we're ready. Yes. Here we go. Good luck.
So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming and moreover staying in this Friday afternoon before the holidays. I want to present you my immersion project regarding the understanding of public perception of coral reef threats to develop a communication strategy for conservation. Just few basics. What we define as a coral reef is a marine underwater ecosystem characterized by reef building corals. And why it's important? Because they gather 1/3 of the worldwide marine biodiversity. And 500 million of people rely on it, first regarding their fisheries. Let me put this. Their fisheries for their livelihood and nutrition, but also for the coastline protection, which give them the opportunity to develop many activities like tourism. And currently, the blue economy experts estimate around 27 billions of euros of benefit each year thanks to this ecosystem. Nevertheless, this precious ecosystem is endangered because of the climate change. And there is, of course, an ocean warming, sea level rise, and many meteorological events which are occurring. But there is also a mysterious guy, which is the ocean acidification. And why this one is less known? Because for now, it's not visible, it's not measurable as the other. But scientists predict to happen this ocean acidification in the next decade. And in fact, what they say is this is the other CO2 problem. This is the evil twin of the global warming because it will have some multiple scale impact. First, in terms of physiology of the animals, then in their morphology, as you can see on these shells, for example, but then also wider in terms of intra and interspecies communication. Okay. While scientists predict a disaster, the public do not react. I can give you two examples. One is the European perception of climate change, a study done on France, Germany, Norway, and United Kingdom. They asked two people, what do you have in mind when we say climate change? And no one among 4,000 people answered the ocean acidification. Another example is the ocean acidification perception of the British public. In the survey, 1/5 of the participants have heard about the ocean acidification. Nevertheless, their knowledge remained very low. And also, before and after the IPCC report, which was published in 2014, there is no significant difference, meaning that the scientific communication do not have a direct effect on the public perception. And regarding the France, we have in fact a huge concern. First, the French gather 10% of the worldwide coral reefs around the world and share them between the three oceans, which is a unique position. Also, we are the second most vast EEZ around the world after the USA with 11 million kilometers squared, meaning that the potential to involve people, the French people, in the coral reef conservation is crucial. And I will say even more, it's a duty for the country. And we have to know that 90% of the maritime territory is located in the overseas. So we need to involve the overseas communities in this conservation program. So we arrive to our question, understand the public perception. Besides this, we have to answer different questions, which is what are the current knowledge of the people regarding the coral reef threats? What are the perception they have on the coral reef? The threats in general, but in particular also the ocean acidification. Then we want also to develop a communication strategy, meaning that we need to identify the message we have to deliver, and this will be based on the missing knowledge of the people. We want also to assess if there is a link between the knowledge, the perception, and the behavior of the people. And we want to know if our messages need to be delivered to a target or to a global population, and by which tool. So my work was divided throughout 3 steps. First, gather data and characterize the sample. Then analyze it according to 4 aspects that I will detail to you later. And finally, build a communication strategy. For today, I will detail particularly my analysis, but if you want to come back on one or the other part, we can do it later. So the data collection was done thanks to a survey that Louis-Vincent Lepeu designed in last year, so previous Mares. We shared it together during 6 months, allowing us to gather 1,041 answers. So the first step for me was to evaluate this sample, compare the content with the INSEE data, and then define if we could use it. So I won't spend time on this, but for sure it was done. And then we arrive on the methodology. So I said that we want to work around 4 factors. The first one is the knowledge, meaning what people have understood or memorized regarding the coral reef threats. After, we have the perception, which is not the same because it's more the sensing, the opinion that people have regarding the environmental risk. Also, I chose to add the connectedness, which is defined in the social science literature as a link between the human and the environment, meaning how they project themselves within an environment. And finally, the willingness to change, which is the involvement that people have in behavioral change. So regarding the knowledge, we ask to people, can you cite some factors which are threatening coral reefs? So we gather 300 different words or concepts, allowing us to define 6 categories, which are exploitation, climate change, pollution, urbanization, tourism, and others. Then we identify the main word and we compared these 6 categories with the 7 parameters I've used previously to characterize the sample. For the perception and the connectedness, this time we used oriented question like this one. Do you think that this factor is harmful for coral reef? And in this case, people could answer with a gradient answer coming from 1 when they totally disagree to 5 when they totally agree. And then we build an index averaging the different answers that each respondent have to build our perception and connectedness index. And we compare this index with the 7 profile parameters that we used in the sample characterization. And finally, for the willingness to change, we ask a multiple choice question regarding the measures that people think to be mandatory to implement to protect the reefs, or those they think they can implement themselves, so accept to do. So we identified also the main one, and we did an index doing a ratio between the number they accept to do and the number they consider to be mandatory. Regarding the analysis and the result, concerning the knowledge, the first answer is the pollution. It's understood and it's mentioned, in fact, for 81% of the respondents, with words like waste, plastic, or sunscreen, product. And just after, we have the climate change for 45%, exploitation for 48%. Then after again, tourism. And the last one was urbanization. Also, we had 14% of the people mentioning the acidification, but most of them were experts. But then later in the survey, we asked them, have you heard about ocean acidification before the survey? And in fact, 77 of them answered yes, meaning that they could know the principle, the event, without associating it directly to a coral reef threat. Then I said that we have this 6 parameters and we wanted to compare it to the profile of the people. I could present you my nice statistics and p-values, but I prefer for this afternoon to go more in a more friendly way. So let's say this is an importance of this parameter: age, sex, profession, distance to the sea, location in mainland or overseas, city size, and environmental field. First, the environmental field. So people working in environment are considered as experts, and they answer, it's true, more, and then mention more all the different categories of threats. Okay, they have a complete knowledge. Now, the other parameter of the profile of the sample, which impact the answer, are the age, the distance to the sea, and the overseas location. And this influences the answer in terms of exploitation, tourism, and urbanization, meaning that they have also a more complete overview of the threats than the others. To say it differently, youth have an updated knowledge compared to seniors, as well as littoral and overseas people. In terms of profile, what we can see in detail is that pollution and climate change, almost everyone can mention it. But then the exploitation remain for people younger than 65 years old. And the tourism and the urbanization have almost the same profile, which is mainly people between 24 to 35 years old, littoral and overseas people. So the level of the knowledge on coral reef threats and ocean acidification is age and likely site dependent. Now, regarding the perception. So we had this index and we had to compare it also with the 7 profile. To sum the result a bit, we obtained some significant difference in terms of age, with the higher perception level obtained for the 25 to 34 years old. Also, for the sex, we obtained a significant difference, and the women have a higher perception than men. Then we compared the socio-professional category, and we didn't observe any particular difference. But for the expertise that we said before, people working in environment have also a higher perception index than the others. We compared also the location of the people. The distance to the sea is not by itself a significant parameter, but the location in overseas is, because people in overseas have a higher perception index. We did the same for the connectedness, so I will go a bit faster. We obtained the same result for the age and for the sex, but not for the location. So to sum this, perception and connectedness are influenced by the age and the sex, but only the perception is ocean proximity dependent. And finally, we arrive on the willingness to change. So the measures considered to be the most mandatory are also the most accepted. And first, to reduce the waste with 90% and consume local products around 84%. Nevertheless, you remember I speak about the ratio between accepted and mandatory, and we arrive at that point. If people accept all the measures they consider to be mandatory, they should have a ratio of 1. If they accept less measures, it means that there is less measure accepted compared to the number of measures they think to be mandatory. So the ratio is lower than 1. And this is the case that we have here, because 77% of the people do not accept completely what they consider to be mandatory to protect the reef. So we come back on our questions at the beginning. We have assessed the knowledge of the coral reef threats, also the perception regarding the reef, the threats, and the ocean acidification. We have identified some missing knowledge and some target to deliver the messages. Now we are currently working on the link between knowledge, perception, and connectedness with the behavior. And we have also identified some communication tools that we want to implement, which is part of the communication strategy. So to conclude, we have highlighted the importance of knowledge, perception, and connectedness in the study of public understanding of coral reef threats, and all the 3 parameters are needed. The difference in age range was shown with the 25-34 years old, which are more aware than seniors, and they have a higher perception and connectedness. It's shown in the literature that currently there is a rise in terms of non-environmental activism around the youth. Also, the ocean proximity increases the knowledge and the perception of coral reef threats. And in social science, it's explained by a physical and an affective experience. Finally, we found a balance, partial willingness to change, and it may be due to the knowledge, the perception, and the connectedness. This is what we are finally defining for the communication strategy. So I want to take a few seconds more to acknowledge all the founders, but more particularly Eric and Aldine, who gave me the opportunity to share their passion and their research. And I want particularly to thank you, Aldine, because you raised my knowledge and perception for sure, for all the very late discussion on night on Zoom and in the lab also. And you gave me the opportunity to grow up in social science, and I really, really like it. One point of philosophy: people protect what they love and they love what they understand, according to Cousteau. But do you think with this result that they just need to understand to protect the reefs? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Maeva. Congratulations for this presentation, which is just in the allotted time. You're not supposed to see Aldine, who is in a room, but who is not assessing her work, of course, but she's here. I'm sure she liked your final acknowledgement. So here, Paola, Juliette, do you want to start?
Yes. Hello, Maeva. Thank you for presentation. I had one question. So you aggregate all this data, and I wanted to know more about your future action after this project. And what are the channels of communication you think it's better to use to spread this scientific knowledge, now that you know the characteristic of the people answering your questionnaires and their profile?
So we have identified first as the main tools, internet and TV. For everyone, even seniors answer internet. So it's a bit surprising, but why not? And I think that through internet, in fact, we could also use different support according to the age. So maybe I can show you, it's not complete yet, but yes. I started to build a kind of sum up of the different age that we will target. We will gather, in fact, the 35 to 64 years old, because they have very common characteristics. And I showed you a global perception index, but in fact, I've done also a detailed analysis according to 5 main points, which are, okay, what is a reef, what is a threat, the ocean acidification, the possible consequences on human also, and the tools. So it's okay, it's not finished yet, but like that we can have an idea of the different messages. And also but because basically this group of question was done, I won't say randomly because we have think about it, but it's just in terms of method. We confirm this with some correlation test. So it's for you, Christophe. And in fact, the group of questions that we have built are correlated also between themselves. So meaning that these messages, this question deliver a common messages. And also it's good to have this because the connectedness is represented by these questions here, and they are not connected or correlated with any other question. Meaning that in our way to think the communication strategy, we need to build a link between the people and the reefs. Really, so if it's not possible physically for everyone, for sure, it has to be affective. And then we can deliver perception information that can raise, and then the knowledge will be fixed, and the people will act also according to it.
Okay, I appreciate the nice. Apparently, you like to play, really to play with the statistical tools, but also to show really nice information. I'm not sure everyone can see it, but it's really nice. Paola, maybe.
Question. Thank you very much, Maeva. You did a great job, I think. You play with a lot of data, and I agree with Christophe. You enjoy to play with them. So it's not often the case. So it was very interesting. So I have two questions. The first one, it's more fundamental, and you start with the question of the acidification. And then at the end, it was more a survey on the impact of all the different threats on coral reef. My question is, first of all, without except the coral reef, do you have an example of how communication strategy can help to the safeguard of the biodiversity? This is a very broad question. I will start with that, and then I go further on my question.
Okay, so if I understood well, you mean, okay, here I was focused on coral reef threats and ocean acidification, but how can I extract something for any scientific communication, right?
Yeah, or if you have some example, not perhaps marine, where the communication can help this safeguard.
In fact, the environmental communication is something which is more and more studied. Because he has a huge concern and impact when it's well done. For the pollution.
Sorry, Maeva, impact for who? Impact for
the public.
The guy that they have to take the decision, or for the public?
Both.
Okay.
Both, because I think the guy who are taking the decision, it's never the priority to invest and to conserve the thing, because there is a lack of employment and any emergency before. But if the communication, the media raised a huge concern in the public, then the decision makers are forced to act because of the social pressure.
Okay, so now I go back on acidification. Do you think that the public and, for example, the overseas publics can have an impact, and how they can have an impact on a global acidification?
You mean an impact to avoid it?
To reduce?
To reduce? Alors, in terms of population, the overseas people, it's a minority. In France, for example, it's 3%. So meaning that even if they do their best, if the other 97% do nothing, the impact will be very reduced. But maybe the impact cannot be directly in the field, but can be throughout the population itself, by showing maybe, because they are in contact with this influence, if they show maybe with the social media, because this is the strongest tool currently, the other people on the other part of the world can say, oh, guy, see what it's happening there. And by raising the awareness, then the rest of the population will do the rest. I think it's the most efficient way.
Okay. My second question, it's more methodological. So if you was in charge of the surveys really at the beginning, what do you want to change? What do you want to ask differently, perhaps? Or what kind of topics that you have not addressed now you would like to address in the future? To complete your surveys or to modify your survey?
In terms of another topic, I'm not sure, because also it was founded by Acid Reef, so it was framed.
Topic in the reef, obviously.
Yeah, maybe no, but for me, in terms of organization of the question, we could have think to not mention acidification and then pass to something else and then go back to ocean acidification again, because it can influence the answers. Also, they had some images between the sections, and for me, images for sure induce some bias. Also, we didn't put any bad answer or wrong answer. Let's say everything was a threat. Everything was yes. And because people have tendency to answer yes to a scientific question just because we ask them, I think we should put some random wrong answer also to correct this.
Yes, I agree with you.
And also, I have a tendency that people could understand if we explain them. So I would say we could ask some question at the beginning regarding the acidification, like, okay, what do you think are the impact concretely or not? Then explain them what is it, and then ask the same question to see if there is a difference before and after the explanation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Maeva.
Okay, hi Maeva. I would like, I think, to congratulate you clearly for this presentation. I think it's one of the best PowerPoints I've had to see for a while. Not only you made it really nice, but also you made it really easy to follow for the public. It seems like everything is here, not just to pop up and to be nice, but really to be understood. And the same is for the presentation. So maybe you will see who is who in the feedbacks because I've said something like that. So really, congratulations. You not only wanted to show that you've done a lot of work, but also you wanted us to understand it, and it's great. Also, corresponding to your data, it's a lot of data, and not only a lot of data, it's data that it's hard to analyze. I mean, it's not just to box plot and to student test. You had to ask yourselves a lot of questions. You needed a lot of contextual awareness, and also a lot of information that were not in your background. So I'm sorry, congratulations, really. So maybe I have questions also. That's really congratulations. At some point, I think it's on slide 19, you're talking about the fact that only the young people were connecting tourism and urbanization as a threat on coral reef.
Right.
Yep. So later in this presentation, you're talking about the new generation, that you are more aware of all of that. But I would like to know how you made it also sure that here you have no two correlations, like maybe the young people you have in your study, in your survey, it's also maybe more marine students, for example, from Mares and so on and their friends. So have you been able to make sure that you have also a good representation of the people between 24 and 35 years old?
Yeah, because it's something that I did not mention regarding the experts, let's say people more aware. We have only, okay, it's the number in the whole sample, but it's only 27% of the sample. So it's not the majority, and it's and they are more located in the let's say next tranche of age, because it's more scientists. So I don't have here the real proportion in mind, but I think for sure we have some students in marine studies, but not completely.
Okay. Also, a bit later, I think you say somehow that connectedness is shared by everyone, not recording. It's 68, I think. It's rare to see a slide called 68, but yes, it's in your slide 68. It seems like here connectedness is the same whatever you're living close or far from the sea.
Yep.
What do you feel? I'm a bit surprised by that. Like, how could we feel connected the same if we're living by the shore, going there every day, or living in the countryside?
So I discussed this more in my report because it was one of the most surprising results we had. I think even if you are in overseas, there is two things. There is, okay, when you are close to the shore in mainland, it's not sufficient, even for perception, to have a higher level of perception. It's something that we highlighted, even for the connectedness also. It's not significant. We compared also, just to show you, the littoral in the mainland and the littoral in the overseas. And for the connectedness, it's not significant. So I think
just Maeva, just to make sure, when you're saying littoral, it's mainly on in the metropole.
Both main country metropole, overseas.
Main country, okay.
Yeah. Oh, sorry for the.
Yeah, no, it's clear.
Yeah, and littoral is defined by INSEE below 10 kilometers from the sea. And I think it's okay. We expect the overseas to have a higher perception and connectedness because they have a cultural background also based on that. Nevertheless, in our daily life currently, we do not define the environment as part of our life. In the social science and sustainable science, which is quite good now, they explain this because in our way to build our day, our season, our work, we never take into account the environment. We are going to continue the same activities, whatever is the weather, for example. And even if in overseas they are more impacted, apparently it's not enough. Or at least with the sample we have, we don't see any difference.
Okay, it's good also to remember that no significant differences can mean that there is no differences, or that you don't have enough data. That's good.
But we are quite proud because even if there is only 3% of the people, the population in overseas, in our sample, they are 11%. So we have quite good proportion of them in our answers.
Maybe I will conclude on the last question. At some point, you say that 77% of the respondents, I'm not sure which ones, were not accepting what is mandatory to protect the sea. I think it's something, yeah, it was here. Could you define a bit more what in particular they have difficulties, we have difficulties to accept?
To accept? First, the transport. Because the list that we propose them is to take less flights, take more public transport. So we have some difference, you see, for example, with the plane. They think it's mandatory, but finally less than the half think it's doable.
When you say it's mandatory, it means that it's not mandatory by law. It's mandatory. We will have to do that to protect them.
They think it's mandatory to protect them. The respondents think it's mandatory. So yes, this is I think the transport is the same, and which something which was interesting also is they had an open answer, and some of them try to justify themselves in this field, explaining, yeah, you know, I cannot decrease my internet consumption because I really need it for my work. Just okay, they need it to justify.
Yeah, we need it. Okay, I guess we could talk about this for long. Okay, thank you a lot, Maeva. I know if you want to add any questions, maybe Aldine, you can come back and participate.
Yeah, so I cannot highlight my video, so I don't know. You block it, I think.
Yes, you can come back. It's because I didn't want to disturb Maeva seeing her supervisor. Okay, so thank you so much, Maeva. Yeah, it was a really good talk. I mean, I joined Christophe, so I really congratulate you for all this big progress you did along your training and everything you learned. And I have to admit that you did everything, and you were a really good teacher for me regarding everything. So it was really wonderful to work with. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So if there is no more questions, so thank you, Maeva. I will propose you to stop sharing your screen. And so I will just, Maeva, Marine, and who is still here? Sabrina, so I will just put you back in the waiting room, also deactivating the YouTube live, accepting Ruxandra in here, and we're coming back. So for Marine.